Welcome back to the Doomsday Show for January 5th. Friday! We made it to Friday. And the world didn't come to an end. But don't worry, we still have next week. But today, it's a special tribute to our good friend, Reverend Pat Robertson of the Christian Broadcasting Network, because he made a prediction of Doomsday himself. Well, you have to understand, Pat Robertson is one of my favorite predictors of things. Though I've told you about predictions. Well, we'll get into that in a minute. This week, on January 3rd, he basically told us that a massive killing was going to take place in the United States. Possibly by Muslims, possibly nuclear. And he did this by talking to God. I understand this. I actually went to the Oral Roberts fundraiser where he had a garage sale, and I picked up this phone. Most beautiful blue phone you've ever seen. I'll show it to you sometime. And I picked it up, and he goes, God here says, yeah, well, this is the right Reverend Reiser. He says, don't call it formalities. You know, we talked to him. And ever since then, like any good minister, we can talk to God. People always ask us. There's a special phone number. But having said that, Pat Robertson basically said God said there was going to be a massive killing sometime in September of 2007. Now, this is very, very important because Pat Robertson speaks to 90 million people on a daily basis. And he conveyed to them the proper terror of doomsday that is necessary. After all, it isn't just enough that God wants us to know doomsday is coming. He needs us to feel that exquisite suffering of knowing that our end is coming. Because after all, we know what's going to happen. We're all going to die. I mean, this is up there with Mr. Robertson's predictions of Supreme Court justice disappearing off the thing. He even prayed for it. And he was successful. We have 2 more Supreme Court justices in the year that he said it was, in 2005. I mean, he's a little off in his predictions. 1980, he predicted the USSR would invade the Middle East. 1981, he thought it was going to, Russia, USSR at the time, was going to invade Israel. He's talked about economic collapse. The one that I always love is the one he predicted that a hurricane was going to hit Florida, particularly Orlando, because that company, which is so pro-homosexual practices, flew rainbow flags. Disney one day, and he said that they were threatening and waving the flag in front of God's face so that they could bring on personal doomsdays to themselves, personal destruction of massive terrorist attacks and everything else. Now, let me mention this. Everybody's doomed. Everybody's damned. We already know this, and we accept this with the divine grace of the suffering sinners that we are. We don't have to worry about if we're going to die. We are. We don't have to worry about if doomsday is going to come. It will. It says so. It says not just in the Bible, but in the Quran and the Vishnus. And I can show you so many ancient texts, and I will. Well, the world doesn't come to an end quicker. But he basically said that they were taking on because God was going to punish them. And you know what happened that year? No Florida hurricane, but one did come up on the beach at Virginia Beach and swamped the area, right where he has his headquarters. So that he basically made the correct prediction in the wrong location. Now, like I said before, I love the observations of God. And Pat Robertson is one of the great observers of God. Because God told him to run for president in 1984, and he did do that. And made him a very popular fellow. He has all sorts of interests. And because, you know why? Because men like him, which I so honor and so grateful to serve by, because after all, we're in the same idea of making sure that everybody knows that God is going to destroy the earth and that he's going to punish people in the process, that it just amazes me how he accomplishes this 90 million. And not only that, but he gets people to pay him for their privilege of making these statements. Now, should you be afraid of Pat Robertson? Not at all. Because the Bible is very clear on this. Deuteronomy 17:22. Look it up. But basically it says that if a prophet speaks and everything out of his mouth doesn't come true, Don't be afraid of him. Well, let's be honest. Pat Robertson hasn't had a particularly good score. I mean, I love his attitude. He wanted us to go to war with South America by assassinating the leader, Chavez. He thought we should go out and have the United States government, his good friend George Bush, go out and assassinate him. What a wonderful idea. Bring that personal doomsday to that president for bothering with American interests. The thing that I dislike about what Mr. Robertson has done so often that you must never accept the hubris of, because hubris means personal pride, is a sin. And that is that the United States has been picked out specially for punishment, but that it may, in fact, be one of the last survivors of Doomsday. That's ridiculous. It's more likely to be wiped out than almost any country on the face of the earth. After all, how many enemies do we have? We are told that all the time. In fact, Pat Robertson has made that very clear, that we are at war with the other competing religious force, led by Allah. That's right. Allah is the enemy of Jehovah, the all-powerful creator. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that just, I have a lot of arguments over this. But they too want a destruction and death of everyone. And Mr. Robertson believes that in 2005 that a lot of Muslims were going to suddenly accept Christ. And we would all have one good Christian world. If that were to happen, there'd be no needs for Revelation and Doomsday, would there? Except for one small detail. Without the death of everything, nothing will stand before the judgment of God. So I'm not afraid of Pat Robertson's predictions. In fact, I embrace them. I hope that he does too. But don't misunderstand. I still consider it a sin, because you're not supposed to predict the hour and the day of God's return. And Mr. Robertson in 2005 did say the Antichrist and Jesus Christ were not going to appear in 2005. And he warned you. He said, do not believe anyone who says that Jesus Christ is not going to return today or tomorrow. He did. He honestly said that in 2005. So we know how bad that is. Because after all, destruction can come at any time. It is a sin to think that Jesus Christ, and you got to be prepared for God and Jesus. And if you're Muslim, Muhammad, or the 12th Imam, or any number of other potential destructions. So my hat's off to you, Mr. Robertson, because you too have proven that you have to sin to be forgiven. This is the Right Reverend Richard Reiser saying goodbye until Monday, because I have a couple of shifts at the church this weekend. And if I don't see you Monday, the world is over.